Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of the GP channel. Today's episode may be a bit more dry and tedious for some of you, but please try to push through because it is also a very important episode that I truly believe can help many of you, not just in the context of a GP classroom, but also in life itself. So what I'll be going through today will be a certain mental framework that can help you think critically about social issues, about GP topics and GP concepts. So if you're someone that finds it difficult to come up with an opinion or stand on your own, then this framework is definitely for you. So please try to pay attention and take down notes if you have to. So without further ado, let's dive straight into the content. Hi, and welcome to the second episode of the GP channel, and today we will be focusing on a certain mental framework, the ICCE Framework. Oh, and if you see an icon of a boy pop up on your screen at any given time during the video, just like that, please pause the video and take down the notes on the screen. With that, let's proceed on with the lesson. The ICCE Framework is essentially a way for you to think about and look at the world around you. Beyond that, however, it is also a very useful tool to help you better understand the social issues that are happening around the world and to the people around you. In other words, it is a tool to help you better understand GP topics as well as GP concepts. So, this ICCE framework comprises and is an acronym for 4 different lenses through which you can appraise these social issues by. These 4 lenses include identity, conflict, change, and ethics. I shall now explain to you how you can utilize these 4 lenses to analyze social issues and ultimately to help you with your general paper. Let us start with the lens of identity. To really understand how you can use identity as a lens, you must first realize 2 simple things. First, you have to realize that everyone is different. No one person is born the same as another, and everyone in this world has different backgrounds. Which leads to the second point that you have to acknowledge. That because of this diversity in backgrounds, everyone will experience the world and experience social issues differently. So in looking at any given social issue or GP topic, you always have to ask yourself 2 questions. First, who are the people that will experience this issue differently from you? And second, why do they experience this issue differently from you? To help you out with the why question, which is definitely harder to answer, there are some perennial social factors that will always come up as reasons for people's diverse experiences of social issues. These include, but are not limited to, factors like gender, race, culture, nationality, and ethnicity. So, all these constitute the lens of identity, and it is a lens that can really help you understand social issues on a much deeper level, because this lens forces you to acknowledge and even appreciate people's diverse experiences of social issues. Now, let us try applying this lens on an issue that is very real and very relevant to all of us right now, COVID-19, and more specifically, the school closures that came with the spread of COVID-19. So at this point, please pause the video and think, who are the people that will experience this school closure differently from you? And why will they experience it differently? For myself, I thought of 3 groups of people that will experience the closures differently from me and from you as well. First, students whose homes are not safe places or places that they enjoy going back to. The school closures will force these students to be home even if their homes are places that they do not enjoy being in. Next, students that come from families that are struggling financially. These students may not be able to afford laptops or computers to continue their schooling journey via online means like the others. Finally, single parents or parents who are essential workers. For both these groups of people, having their children permanently at home may pose many issues, for they may not have enough time and energy on their hands to deal with said children. This may lead to further latent consequences like mental health issues and/or physical health issues. These are just some points I've come up with to try try to help you understand how we can use the lens of identity to appraise social issues. I hope you have tried your hand at it too. With that, let's move on to the second lens of the ICCE framework, the lens of conflict. In using conflict as a lens to appraise issues, we have to first understand that for every issue, there will always be different stakeholders involved. These stakeholders usually involve, but are not limited to, individuals, organizations, communities, and of course, the government. These different stakeholders may, and usually will, have differing ideas, perspectives, beliefs, and opinions when it comes to the issue at hand. This may, and usually will, lead to conflict between said stakeholders. So in using the lens of conflict to look at a given social issue or GP topic, you have to ask yourself two questions. First, who are the stakeholders that will likely be in conflict with one another? And second, why will they be in conflict with one another? Please pause the video now and take a while to read through and understand these points on the screen. These are points that will help you answer the two questions that were just mentioned to you, and that you always have to ask yourself whenever you use the lens of conflict to appraise a given social issue or GB topic. Once you are done, let's try applying the lens of conflict to the same social issue that I previously explored, COVID-19, and the school closures that come with it. Who are the stakeholders that will likely be in conflict with one another with regard to this issue in question? And why will they be in conflict with one another? Try it with these stakeholders: parents, the government, and schools. Please pause the video and try out this little activity for yourselves. With that, let's move on to the third lens, the lens of change. This lens is pretty simple to understand and to use. Just understand one thing, that everything changes. Technology changes, the nature of politics changes, terrorism evolves, even the family unit changes over time too. Everything changes. So, in using the lens of change to appraise any social issue at hand, just ask yourself two simple questions. First, how has this issue changed or is changing? Next, why has this issue changed or is changing? To help you answer the why question, we have to look at something called characteristics. We have to look at the characteristics of our current society versus the characteristics of our societies in the past. Or the characteristics of our current generation versus the characteristics of past generations. For example, perhaps we are less conservative as a society now as compared to the past. But are we also more materialistic as compared to the past? These are just some questions you can explore and look at when thinking of the why question. Now, let's try our hand at applying this lens of change to the family unit. How has the family unit changed from the past to the present? Perhaps in the past, gender roles were more rigid and perhaps even more unequal and unfair. In our current societies, however, because of our awareness of the importance of equality, gender roles within the family are no longer as rigid and imbalanced as before. Family structures are also evolving, and the traditional nuclear families of the past are just one out of the many different structures that exist in our societies today. Once again, please pause the video here and try out using the lens of change for yourself. Once you are done with that, let us proceed on to the fourth and final lens of the ICCE framework, the lens of ethics. To understand how to use this lens, we first have to understand that for every given social issue, there will always be two sides to the story. Oftentimes in life, and especially in the GP classroom, you will be requested to, or you will have to, take a side. I know that some of you will struggle to do so, so let me help you with that. In order to know which side or stand to take, let us explore the concept of ethics. In definite terms, ethics refer to the moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. Now, these moral principles include formal laws as well as informal social norms. Formal laws refer to rules established by an institution, usually the government, and it comes in the form of rights and laws. Informal social norms, on the other hand, refer to the accepted behavior that an individual is expected to conform to in a particular group, community, or culture. These accepted behaviors are not usually codified into formal laws, but are rather informally policed by the people within your community. For example, if you are not polite to the elderly in Singapore, someone within your family will most likely come up to chide you. The same goes for if you cough on someone without covering your mouth, especially during this period of time. So, in order to pick a side when it comes to a given social issue, you just need to ask yourself two simple questions. First, what are the laws and rights and social norms that exist in the society or societies in question? Next, based on these laws and rights and social norms, which side of the issue will you then stand on? Once again, let's try this lens out on a real-world issue: the abolishment of the death penalty in Singapore. In order to take a stand on this issue, we first have to understand the various laws and rights that exist with regard to capital punishment in Singapore or even the world beyond. We also have to understand the informal social norms that exist in Singapore. Do we as a society believe in an eye for an eye punishments? Do we value collective security and stability over individual rights? Based on these questions, you should now personally evaluate if you agree or disagree with said laws and rights and social norms. That is how you eventually come up with a stand with regard to the issue in question. For many of you, this step of evaluation may seem very difficult to complete, but don't worry, as we progress along on this GP journey together, you will definitely find it easier to do so. For now, just think about what we learned today. We can actually use the lens of identity, of conflict, and even of change to help us evaluate existing laws, rights and social norms, and eventually to help us take a stand with regard to this issue. For example, in applying the lens of identity to this issue, perhaps some people are forced by circumstance and background to commit a certain crime. Therefore, to me, the mandatory death penalty would be very unfair on him or her because he or she had little choice and little room to maneuver in the first place. In applying the lens of change, is the idea of the death penalty being a good deterrence an outdated one? Perhaps our generation is now deterred differently? All these are just some ideas I'm throwing out off the top of my head just to show you how interlinked all these lenses really are. Each lens can help you think of points to answer the questions that crop up when using another, and vice versa. Ultimately, these are lenses that can help you better evaluate and analyze the social issues that are happening around us and as discussed in the GP classroom. To sum today's episode up, what we have learned today constitutes the ICCE Framework. Once again, it is a framework that can help us appraise social issues and think about said issues on a much deeper level. This framework comprises 4 lenses: identity, conflict, change, and ethics. In order to use the lens of identity to analyze social issues or GP topics, just think about people's different backgrounds. To use the lens of conflict, think about the different stakeholders as well as the different interests of these stakeholders with regard to the issue. To use the lens of change, just think about the characteristics of your society or generation as compared to that of the past. For the lens of ethics, just think about the principles that guide people in the societies in question and think about whether you agree or disagree with said principles. That is all for today's lesson, and if you have any queries, feel free to drop me a message or even just comment your questions down below. Take care.